Okay, so I feel like this video's been in the making for like a very long time. Not in terms of I've been like brewing up something crazy and I've been, cooking like, insane stuff or ideas. It's just I've brought this up quite a bit, or brought up Spectacular Spider-Man on occasion from video to video, even some videos that literally don't involve Spectacular Spider-Man. And I was just like, you know what? I really need to do a video on this because honestly, Spectacular Spider-Man, or Peter Parker in Spectacular Spider-Man, is the biggest fumbler in generations. He's a generational fumbler. And I'm going to tell you why, but let me start by saying that I watched this entire show, well, a long time ago, but I rewatched it through, honestly, a reaction channel called Spilling the Milk. So if they ever comment on this video, which probably will never happen, but if they ever do, I might have a little bit of a fanboy moment, or a really big fanboy moment. They're a bunch of cool dudes, so I was able to watch or rewatch a lot of it through that reaction, but I also rewatched the series for the most part, and yeah, it was just really good. So I just wanted to give that quick little shout out, even though I know some of you are probably like, you're a way smaller channel than him or than them, so why give a shout out? But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. But I'm really here to talk about the show, at least not in its entirety, but the show in terms of Spectacular Spider-Man's love interest, right? Because there is quite a few of them in this. They kind of throw a lot at you, especially in this show. They throw like a ton of stuff, but they do have some pretty good character building and stuff like that. But the relationship stuff is definitely a little iffy from time to time. Well, just like every other Spider-Man. And in all honesty, I absolutely loved this show. I loved watching the long reaction to it. And it basically reaffirmed to me that I'm really not in the minority on the fact that Peter is like horrible in relationships. Like absolutely horrible in relationships. And yes, don't get me wrong, a lot of Spider-Man are really bad. I mean, that's kind of like the Spider-Man thing. But in Spectacular Spider-Man, he's even worse. It genuinely feels horrible to watch sometimes. And honestly, that's probably for an actual reason. Like, the writers probably did that, at least partially, for a reason. But I want to just get into talking about these love interests and why he is flat out the biggest fumbler ever. Right? We'll start with Gwen, and I think there's a pretty big consensus that she is basically best girl for the majority of the show. Now, there's a reason why I say the majority of the show, because I'll talk about why in a little bit, but Gwen is best girl, right? That is what she is for the majority of the show, and honestly, I think there's a bit of a tendency of this happening when you have a female character who's already part of the whole main character cast right off the bat. But don't get it twisted. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve the label, but I just have to point out that a big reason why she is given that label, especially earlier on, is definitely because she is part of the main character cast. But the first time we really see Gwen obviously having crazy feelings for Peter is after the whole football tryouts, right? Where he ends up throwing his chances to make the team. And yes, he didn't really want to make the team in the first place, but he throws his chances and he embarrasses himself for basically his best friend, Harry. And he kind of has this inner monologue where it's like, yeah, Spider-Man can never have nice things. And to a large degree, I don't disagree, because Spider-Man will always get the short end of the stick. That is just what the character is, and unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And the idea around this whole football scene is it kind of piles on this idea that Spider-Man legitimately never gets what he wants. But then this dude has a female, or Gwen in this case, pull up with ice cream cones and is flat out delusional to the fact that she likes him. What girl does this? Where she's like, oh yeah, I feel bad that, you just basically sacrificed your chances of being popular and being cool and being this, whatever, right? For your best friend. And yeah, here's an ice cream cone. I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to chat with you, whatever, right? What girl does this? Not many. And a lot of them that would do this aren't going to friend zone you, or aren't going to, put you in the category of like, oh yeah, I did this because, we're just really good friends. Yeah, this is a large hint that goes right over Peter's head. And that's just one of the times he fumbles this whole idea, right? We would then head off to another scene where they're basically talking about a coworker and also the whole formal dance type of thing that happens at most high schools, right? And Peter actually asks the coworker, and she's basically an adult, which is kind of an odd thing. And hey, don't get me wrong, I've always gone for older women. That's just always how I've been. And I've always, maybe shot a little bit too high beyond what I really could get. And Peter has some really interesting riz and some really interesting game, you could say. And he's pretty damn good at getting girls. I mean, I'll talk about that a little later, but that's the truth of it. But he basically asked this adult to a formal dance, and he would eventually get rejected, and that's like a whole other thing with Aunt May kind of, blocking her off and be like, you're too old, you got to get out of here, and you're about to make him a victim, and all that weird stuff. But of course, Gwen is literally sitting there, basically telling him like, ask me to the dance, ask me to the dance, ask me to the dance. Like, oh, it'd be so cool to go with you. Like, ask me to the dance over and over and over and over again. But of course, Peter's like, I'm delusional. Like, I'm not going to ask her. Like, I don't want to go in the first place. This and that, yada, 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 right? And he flat out just doesn't get a single signal. Not like a single one. Not a minute signal out of all of this. And he's like, okay, I'm not going to go to the dance. I didn't want to go in the first place. It's whatever. So Gwen's under the assumption he's not going to go. He's not going to go to this dance. I mean, he wouldn't ask me, so whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. And then he shows up with another date with MJ. Yes, and I'm not going to lie, this MJ is a little bit different. And I mean, when I say a little bit, I mean a lot of bit different than your normal MJ. Normal MJ, excuse me. But the fact that, like, he just flat out comes with somebody else, right? When he obviously could have asked Gwen, and he fumbled that bag, and we know how much he eventually is into Gwen in the near future. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. And he continues to fumble over and over and over again. Like, Gwen would obviously see Peter and MJ there and be like, okay, this is a little bit odd. Like, why would you say that you're not going to come and then come with a totally different girl? But, of course, honestly, MJ is a little bit different than you would think. She even tries to set up Gwen and Peter on, like, an impromptu date. But, of course, Peter's like, oh, yeah, I'm swooned over the girl that has been acting like a jerk, a.k.a. Liz, which we'll talk about Liz later. We're going to talk about basically all of the love interests, or I know spilling the milk, which, again, fanboy a little bit, also referenced it as a harem, and you'll hear me reference it as that from time to time, but it definitely was like a harem. And yeah, he kind of he's swooning over Liz all over again, and he simps over her so heavily, which is very valid later on, but like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, this would lead to a whole Halloween event and stuff like that. This is just stuff that happens where you have Liz and MJ all up on him, and Gwen just stands there like, damn, like, what is up with this crazy game, right? Gwen has shown every bit of interest, right? Every single bit of interest, but I guess it's just not direct enough. It's as if Peter actually needs everything written out for him, like on a small piece of paper or something. Maybe a big piece of paper. Maybe a giant sign that is full of LEDs. That's probably what he would need, and then he would still fumble because he doesn't understand simple cues. It's absolutely wild that Peter just goes through all of these motions, and he still doesn't understand that Gwen still likes him, or likes him in general. And he just continues to just fumble over and over and over again. I mean, we get tons of Gwen scenes where she's basically hinting, or kind of hinting at the fact that she likes him, and he decides that we are going to wait for the perfectly wrong time to actually realize that him and Gwen work perfectly together. Like, the dude was already dating somebody. Gwen's now dating freaking his best friend Harry, and now he's like, oh yeah, like, I finally like Gwen after basically all of this stuff happened, right? After literally everything happened. And we'll talk about Liz in a second, because that also puts into a little bit of a perspective of how stupid this was, because they almost kissed when they're both dating somebody that is like supposedly good to them, right? Like obviously Gwen and Harry have an interesting relationship, but like Peter and Liz at this point were like amazing, or at least Liz was amazing, right? So the fact that he's willing to just throw it all away immediately, even though Gwen has shown from episode freaking 1 that she likes him and that she's swooned by him and that like all of these things, that she really, really, really likes him from episode 1. And then he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to wait till the very, very end where I'm going to hurt as many people as possible. And then I'm going to be shoved into this insanely drama-filled situation and then still fumble. Because at the end of the day, you're fumbling so much more being in the situation that he would ended up being in. And this is where I want to talk about Liz, right? And I want to talk about their whole situation or their whole relationship. Because to be honest, Gwen and Liz are the two ones that have major relationships, you could say, with Spectacular Spider-Man. Almost called him Insomniac Spider-Man. That's a totally different thing. Now, don't get me wrong. This whole relationship and female drama thing is a little bit out of order. And you could probably tell by the whole Gwen thing, because it really is. The show is a little bit kind of everywhere, which, to be honest, life is kind of like that too. Nothing is just straightforward, right? For the most part, you're not going to be talking to somebody, like one single person, date them, and then go on to the next person, right? If you have a bunch of friends and you're in a friend group with a ton of people and you have, a crush on this person, but this person has a crush on you, this is kind of like what the love triangle thing is. You're going to be kind of everywhere, right? That's why you get thrown in with your Gwen here, and then you have Liz here, and then you have MJ here, and then we have Black Cat, which obviously that's on the thumbnail. We'll be talking about her too. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. That's why the show is kind of everywhere. That's honestly, for a video, makes it very difficult to write, but for kind of like a show, it just makes a lot of sense. The fact is, not everything's gonna be just straight line perfect, so I kind of like that things are kind of scattered everywhere from time to time, right? Now, we are introduced to Liz, as an annoying cheerleader, right? And frankly, it's just a bit flat. The duo is, for the most part, a bit flat. And that's just the initial take on it. But you can see that when Peter starts getting like all nerdy, explaining science to her, she actually starts taking a bit of a liking to him. But of course, she's still in that little popular girl type of phase where she's like, okay, I gotta basically blow him off to basically show my friends that I still don't mess with a nerd, right? And kind of just shoves them away. But you can see in her face that she's like, damn, like, why did I do that? Like, I didn't really want to do that. And I actually kind of like him, right? And Peter does have this like odd nerdy Riz, but then also has a combination of like nerdy Riz, but also like Chad Riz. It's very odd. Like, you don't really go one direction or the other. He has like this weird confidence, but then on top of that, a weird nerdiness and all this stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Like, you have from time to time him rizzing or also, having game and talking a girl up through kind of like more of that Chad standpoint, or a more confident standpoint, you could even say, right? But then sometimes it's just him being himself, him being nerdy, him showing off science stuff, and that allows him to rizz somebody up or allows someone to kind of fall for him just a little bit. And like I said, female romance stuff is a bit spread out kind of everywhere, but eventually we do get her coming around, and eventually he gets what he wants, exactly what he wants. He wants to date Liz, and he wants to, be with the popular girl. And here's the thing. I think everyone had that moment where you're like, whoa, that girl's really attractive, but it's more of just like an attraction thing than anything. You don't know the girl. You don't really, you don't know what she's really all about. Maybe she's more popular than most people. It's not going to be as clear cut, obviously, for most regular high schoolers. Like, I definitely can admit that when I was in high school, I was definitely attracted to somebody, like some random girl that I didn't really know. She was pretty popular, whatever, right? But she was just attractive, and that's why I was like, oh wow, like she's really pretty, whatever. But it was never like this direct. Of course, they play it up a little bit for your movies and your shows, so that's what it is. But at the same time, I do understand that aspect a little bit. But it's crazy how Peter gets with Liz and she becomes this amazing girlfriend, like top-notch girlfriend. She's amazing. She really puts up with Peter for a while, like a long time, because I'm not gonna lie, he was flat out a shitty boyfriend. And don't get me wrong, I get it. A lot of it had to do with being Spider-Man, but from her perspective, she was so accepting and so forgiving of Peter. And it feels kind of crazy to me that you know that there are excuses for Peter, and the excuses somewhat matter, but at the same time you're like, nah, like Liz, you should break up with him ASAP, like now. Like it doesn't matter. Like through your eyes, through her eyes, she doesn't know about this whole Spider-Man stuff, but she is so forgiving. And someone like that, I mean, any guy would die for someone like that, would want for someone like that. And look, you can call me a simp or whatever. That's fine. Honestly, don't care. That's completely fine with me. But someone who is as forgiving and understanding of people's mistakes gives you a chance to make yourself just flat out a better person is an amazing person. Someone that really nobody deserves for the most part. And at the end of the day is someone that you're going to want to not make mistakes for, right? You're going to want to make yourself so much better for that person to the point where they don't have to worry about these mistakes, or they don't even have to forgive you for these mistakes because you're going to stop making them. Then, of course, the dude would eventually go on to break up with her. And look, I love Gwen, but damn, this just felt like a generational fumble to me. Like the dude couldn't make up his damn mind. Like seriously, what's the point of all this? Just make up your freaking mind in the first place. The fact is, he wanted Liz from day one. He got Liz. He even got a better version of Liz. Yes, don't get me wrong, you get the whole pretty and popular person. But then she turns into this amazing girlfriend, like the perfect girlfriend. And then you're like, you know what? I actually like Gwen. It's like, yeah, Gwen's liked you since episode 1, you freaking idiots. And you could have had that from the beginning. And now all you're doing is hurting people because of it. And all you're doing is breaking up with Liz, breaking her heart, and now she has to basically collect the pieces all on her own. And in a technical sense, Liz was allowed to break up with him because, you know, the whole popularity thing, which was a weird thing to me because I felt like you were kind of backtracking on what she became as a person. But of course, she ended up like crying and breaking down and kind of dealing with that on her own, which proves that she flat out just became a better person and was just an amazing person in general at this point. And it just sucks, man, because he breaks up with her and then he can't even have Gwen now. And the whole like weird love triangle thing is like in pieces because Gwen and Peter had this moment that Harry actually heard, and there was a whole thing where, oh yeah, we'll break up with them and blah blah blah. And now Harry's father is, well, croaked, and now you can't just break up with him. I mean, his father is literally gone. I mean, come on. It definitely was some effed up stuff. I'm not gonna lie. I try my best not to curse on this channel, but you know, sometimes I let it slip. But it definitely was some messed up stuff. Now, let's talk about the other two, right? We're gonna start with MJ, and I want to talk about MJ briefly just because she's not normally like this, right? Normally she is that main love interest, but she's kind of just not the biggest factor here. Yes, you get the whole scene with him and MJ going to the formal together and the whole Gwen thing. But honestly, MJ was more of a wing woman here and even tried to get Gwen and Peter together, But of course, that didn't work. Not even the power of another baddie was able to do this, right? It was just kind of over from the start. Honestly, we should have just expected all of this. I mean, Peter literally is the generational fumbler of the century. That didn't make sense at all, what I just said, but you get what I mean. She did try her best to be a good wing woman from time to time, and you honestly think that she is kind of for the streets for a minute. Like, you think that she's genuinely for the streets, but she actually has some real moral proper stuff going on as well. Like, she's not really a bad person, even with the whole Flash thing where she's kind of hanging out with him, but she's like, I'm not gonna be a second pick, like I'm not second fiddle. And actually, in the words of from Spilling the Milk, she may actually be for the suburbs, not for the streets, which was kind of pretty funny to me, or at least pretty funny to me in general. Because that is true. She seemed like an overall good person, even if she was a bit, flirty and kind of promiscuous, you could say. I feel like that's a good way of putting it, because she definitely was like that. And she was extremely flirty. And yes, she had a little bit of dating with Peter and stuff like that. But he did fumble a bag. I mean, he actually did fumble that bag as well, because he could have gotten with her too if he properly played his cards right. But obviously that didn't happen. And then we have the thumbnail, right? I'm sure some of you are like, when were you going to talk about this? Spider-Man and Black Cat. I mean, I absolutely love Black Cat. And honestly, I think she's done pretty well. And that's in my very casual opinion, by the way. I honestly really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Venom and Black Cat Peter working together, but I've honestly enjoyed almost every iteration of the Black Cat and Peter combo. I think that villain and hero combo is always good. That's why I love Catwoman, and also Batman, right? I think that's always amazing, and I think that's always great. And yes, this is the non-traditional fumble, or definitely a non-traditional fumble, but it's still technically a fumble. But we do have the whole, her breaking her father out of prison thing, and it's actually Uncle Ben's killer, which was, in my opinion, an interesting arc. I wasn't really sure how I was gonna feel about it when I was rewatching it, but I was like, you know what? That's actually not too bad. I kind of like it, because really, you see it in both perspectives. If I'm in Black Cat's position, I also would not really like Spider-Man at this point. I mean, yes, I wanted my father out of prison and stuff like that. You would sacrifice a lot for your family, especially if you felt the way that Black Cat did, or Felicia did, about her own father. So the fact is, in her eyes, Spider-Man's little Naruto talk no jutsu, or whatever it is, being a better person, rubbing it off on her father, and this whole moral dilemma, it's all Spider-Man's fault. That's why her father refuses to just leave and escape this prison, and it really frustrates her, right? And of course, she does come to his aid against the Green Goblin, but this is just another bag that Spider-Man fumbles, and frankly, it's just all connected, man. He continues to fumble more and more and more. It's kind of like you give Peter in this world an inch, and he tries to take a mile, and he just absolutely just falls a million times on his face during that mile. It's kind of odd, but at the same time, very Spider-Man-y. Does that make sense? That doesn't make sense, but it's very Spider-Man. I feel like something good happens to Peter or Spider-Man, and he absolutely F's it up somehow. That feels very Spider-Man. So when I say that Spectacular Spider-Man is a fumbler, or even a generational fumbler at that, I truly mean it. The dude had a harem of women and ended up with none of them. Yeah, sounds like a generational fumble to me. But to just wrap it up, honestly, that's how I feel about Spectacular Spider-Man, the love interest, and all the things that happened within that show. And obviously, nonetheless, if you enjoyed, please show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below. And I would love to hear what you guys have to think. Maybe I left some things out. I mean, I probably did leave some things out. I always leave something out. Now, if you guys know what I left out, and you have some ideas and some other times that Spectacular Spider-Man fumbled the bag hard as hell, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. As always, I am a comic casual, so there's a high likelihood that I'm going to forget something. Now, with that said, if you enjoyed this video, YouTube believes that you'll enjoy this one, so might as well go check it out.